All right, let's talk about college football conspiracy theories. Now, this is one of my personal favorites. Back in 1969 and 1970, there were two college football stadium arsons that occurred 9 miles apart from each other. There was one at the University of Idaho at Neal Stadium, and then there was another one at Rogers Field in Spokane, Washington, where Washington State played. So in the summer of 1969, Idaho had to condemn their football stadium because they had significant erosion underneath the grandstands, which made them unstable, and they had to move their games elsewhere. They decided to play them at Rogers Field in Pullman, Washington, where Washington State played, which wasn't a problem because Washington State Stadium wasn't big enough for Washington State to host their, I believe it was Pac-8 games at the time, because those teams brought enough fans that they needed a bigger stadium, and Rogers Field just wasn't going to cut it. So Idaho played all their home games there. And then on November 22nd, they had their last game, which they lost. The very next night, November 23rd, 1969, at about 11:50 p.m., a fire broke out in the south grandstands of Neal Stadium, where Idaho played, and it burnt a significant part of the stands and all of the press box, which then collapsed into the stands. Now, this particular fire was investigated by a local fire investigator by the name of Thor Fladwed, which is a great name, by the way. He ruled this fire to be arson. It was a poorly written report, but it makes sense with the actual facts surrounding the case. Now, I will say back in 2018, I did send FOIAs to the University of Idaho, Moscow Fire Department, and the Idaho State Fire Marshal. This is the one from the Idaho State Fire Marshal. They don't have anything because they didn't exist till 1986, and the other two didn't have anything at all. So anyway, back to the story. Now, Idaho has their fire in November of 1969. They decide to play all of their home games at Rogers Field the next season. Now, there would be many people who do not care about football who would say, why would we build Idaho a new stadium when they have a perfectly good one 9 miles away that we can all get to fairly easily? And to that I say, there's absolutely no athletic director in the world who is going to agree to play their school's home games at a different school's home stadium in perpetuity. And there were many rumors that the AD at Idaho at the time was not exactly unhappy when Neal Stadium burned to the ground. But having Rogers Field just nearby caused a problem for him. But it also caused a problem for Washington State's athletic director, because Washington State was a part of the Pac-8. They were in a conference with the likes of USC, UCLA, Stanford, these big-time schools, and Rogers Field was very, very small. Washington State was regularly having to travel up to Spokane for their bigger games against USC and UCLA because there were just not enough seats in the stands at Rogers Field. No athletic director worth their salt is going to deal with that for very long. So that brings us to April 4th, 1970. At approximately 10 p.m., a fire started in Rogers Field grandstands, in the south grandstands, underneath the press box, which burned a significant chunk of the grandstands and dropped the press box down on them. If that sounds familiar, it is the exact same way at almost the exact same time that Neal Stadium burned just 5 months prior. This particular fire was also ruled to be arson, but no culprit was ever caught for either fire. But what it did do was it did give Washington State the ability to rapidly tear down their old stadium and build a new one, which was significantly bigger and allowed them to host all of their home games for the Pac-8 in their actual stadium on their actual campus. Now, the fire at Idaho allowed for Idaho to get another stadium built because they had a feasibility study done before the fire that wasn't looking so great in building them a new stadium. But after the fire, they got significant support to build what is now the Kibbe Dome, the best stadium in college football. Now, none of this has ever been proven. However, if you talk to anyone around Moscow or around Pullman that remembers back in that time, there were many, many, many rumors that the two athletic departments got together and decided to fix each other's problem. Now, I also sent requests to Washington State Patrol and Washington State University, and both of them said that they didn't have anything left, which is not shocking again. So, did Idaho and Washington State burn down their stadiums? Maybe. Kind of vaguely seems like it. It is mighty convenient that two teams that needed new stadiums had fires the exact same way that both needed new stadiums and needed them quickly, especially in the case of Washington State, because they were considerably embarrassed by their stadium. And my God, this video is 5 minutes long. No one's going to watch all of it.